everyone, and welcome to the channel. My name is Ryan. Thank you so much for being here. As many of you know, in my long and storied career as a performer, a darling of both stage and screen, I've had the pleasure of being a part of many amazing productions, all of which are so near and dear to my heart, and I know are very near and dear to many of yours as well. Had a conversation with Sam. We came up with an idea that I thought I was going to try this week. Because I have been a part of a couple things that I know that you guys absolutely love, and because there are so many stories from things like Heathers and Wicked and Liv and Maddie that I've never told, I wanted to take an opportunity to tell you some of these stories, but in a fun and interesting sort of way. So this week, I'm empowering you to play a game with me. We are going to play Two Truths and a Lie, Heathers edition, where I'm going to tell you 3 stories about working on Heathers the musical. All of them are going to be true-ish, but one of them is going to have contained within it a bold-faced lie, and you're going to have to decipher, amidst mostly what is true, which story has the lie in it. So without further ado, here are a couple of stories from my time as JD in Heathers the Musical. This first story is honestly something that still to this day makes me so mad because I thought it was really an amazing idea. But before I even dive into it, there's some context that some of you may need to know. Before Heathers was the off-Broadway musical that you know and love, we workshopped it at a theater called the Hudson in Hollywood, California. And the Hudson was literally directly across the street from the studio where I was shooting Liv and Maddie. So the fall of 2013, when I was shooting the first season of Liv and Maddie playing Dickie, I was also working as JD in the workshop of Heathers at the Hudson. It was cool because the lead producer and director of the first season of Liv and Maddie was also the lead producer and director of Heathers. And so me and him would literally rehearse during the day at Liv and Maddie, walk across the street together to the Hudson, and then work on Heathers together. And because we had that resource of the Liv and Maddie studios being right across the street, we were also able to bring some people with us. So the casting office that cast Liv and Maddie also cast the workshop for Heathers, as well as the costume department for Liv and Maddie lended their services to costume the production of Heathers that was the workshop production at the Hudson. The Hudson is this tiny 99-seat theater, and actually I don't even know if it is 99 seats now that I think about it. You can't get the full context for how big this room is, but this is just a normal-sized bedroom, and the theater was probably twice or 3 times the size of this room, which is not very big. No one made any money on this production. It was all just vibes. We were trying to get this little engine that could musical into the right hands, and sometimes the only way to do that is to find a small theater with a group of people who believe in something and to put it on and hope for the best. And that's exactly what we did. As I said, it required a lot of help and a lot of favors. And so our choreographer worked for no money. A lot of the tech people worked for no money. A lot of the band worked for no money. And of course, the costumer, like I said, lended their services out of good faith because they were also costuming us in Liv and Maddie and making a good amount of money working for Liv and Maddie over on Disney Channel. This costumer actually had great vision. And the really cool thing about musicals at this stage, when everything is like very much in its infancy, is that everyone is collaborating to try to make the project the best that it can be. So ultimately, this was a stage of the process where everyone was working for no money, where any idea was a good idea, and where the best idea won no matter where it came from. One day we were working on the very end of the show. So for those of you who don't know Heathers the Musical that well, JD... I can't even believe that this is the plot of the musical, brings a bomb to his high school and threatens to blow up the entire high school in the name of love for his very recent girlfriend. And the girlfriend comes down to the basement with a croquet mallet and says, hey, maybe don't blow up the school. He ends up also having a gun, accidentally shoots himself because they wrestle. It's a whole thing. But JD decides, instead of blowing up the school, to just take the bomb outside and blow himself up. The musical ends with a reprise of the opening number where all of the teenagers realize, hey, maybe it's better to be nice to each other instead of bully each other to literal extinction, and everyone hugs and high fives and the musical's over, leaving you on a great note, feeling high and proud and hoping that you forgot about the whole terrorism in schools plot. Anyway, Heathers is no stranger to murder, and this character that I played, JD, murders 3 people, Heather Chandler, Kurt, and Ram. And at the very end of the musical, everyone is on stage in this grand tableau, and at the very end, the ghosts of Kurt, Ram, and Heather Chandler stand up on top of everyone, and they're all together, including the ghosts. The only person who isn't there is JD. Now, in the course of the entire musical, everyone who dies comes back as a ghost and kind of haunts the protagonist, Veronica. So the vocabulary of, like, the ghosts coming back from the dead is already established in the musical. We were struggling with how we wanted the show to end, what we wanted the final tableau to be, and how we wanted to transition into curtain call. And I was pouting because I was like, literally everyone is on stage at the end of the show except for me. So we were working on the end, it wasn't really working, and the costumer ended up having this interesting idea. She said, okay, Heather Chandler's in her signature red power suit. The boys have their white underwear because they die in their underwear. If you don't know Heather's the musical, you're not going to understand anything I'm saying, but it's a great musical, I promise. So she was saying, what if the final tableau is the boys in their angelic looks in their white underwear, pristine whitey-tighties. Heather Chandler comes back, instead of in a red power suit, in a white power suit, and JD joins them as a ghost, donned instead of in his signature black trench coat, in a white trench coat with a white t-shirt. If you don't know Heather's the musical or Heather's the movie, the character of JD wears a trench coat the whole time. He was the trench coat killer. This was like the beginning of that trope. And so we tried it. And it was stunning. Like when I tell you, this Luke, this final tableau of the ghosts, all of us together, everything nailing it, that's how we ran it in LA. And when we moved the show off Broadway, in the 11th hour, they decided that the white trench coat look wasn't a good look and that it makes more sense, since JD is the antagonist, for him not to join everyone else on stage. And so it ended up being scrapped. But when I tell you, this is the most tragic thing that has ever happened to me, because it was a Luke and it was a great tableau at the end. And if I'm completely honest, I wanted to steal that white trench coat and have it be mine forever. So there's my first story. Can I get some hashtag RIP for the white trench coat in the comments? The second story goes like this. So as I said, we piloted this production of Heather's in this tiny, tiny theater in Hollywood. Literally, this was an insanely small space. Our first weekend, we ran to pretty much full houses, and there was like a very strange and electric sensation going on with Heather's the musical. There was a lot of attention around it, and some of the people who were working on it were pretty connected in the industry and were able to get some heavy hitters to come see it. And suddenly we had a problem on our hands, because so many people wanted to see us that the only way that we could accommodate for all of the people who wanted to see Heather's and potentially even invest in Heather's was to break the fire code. There were two cases in particular where we had to break the fire code in order to fit people into the theater that weren't allowed to be there, and those exceptions, I think, were exceptions worth making. In our second weekend, there was a discussion about breaking the fire code and adding seats to the theater that shouldn't be there, because Billy Crystal had made mention that he wanted to see it and potentially even invest in Heather's the musical. So we have 99 seats and then a stool, and there sat Billy Crystal, while I'm simulating stage sex with Barrett Weed, while we're singing about blowing up high schools and shooting our friends. There is Billy Crystal breaking fire code and being a pretty obvious distraction for me and the rest of the cast. The reason that I bring up the fact that it broke fire code, is just because I think that that's an interesting tidbit, that in order to get this show to where it ended up being, we had to literally break the law to allow enough people to see it for it to matter. But I also say that because to cram people into an already tiny space, you're going to notice the people that get crammed in. And on the third weekend, we broke the fire code again because we had a very special guest. Heather's the musical is based on Heather's the movie. Barrett Wilbert Weed played the role of Veronica, who in the movie was played by none other than Winona Ryder. Winona Ryder herself asked if she could come see Heather's the musical. We broke the fire code for her, which A, is just funny, but B, means that she was very, very visible to us as we were doing this show. The story ends okay, so I feel like I can say this without slandering Miss Winona Ryder. I don't think she watches these videos, but just in case, Winona, we love you. But I need to tell you something, Winona. While you were sitting there watching the show, we were all convinced that Winona hated the show. The whole time we would go backstage and be like, she looks worse than she did the last number. Oh my God, she hated Candy Store. Oh my God, she hates Barrett. Oh my God, she can't stand Ryan's performance as JD. Oh my God, all of the singing and dancing. She looks queasy. She looks like she hated it. She looks like she's falling asleep. It literally looked like she was not having a good time. Now, what I will say is that we were all very young and very self-conscious, and it was literally Winona Ryder who is royalty to Heather's. So we were definitely reading into it. And it is not like it's her job to sit there and put on this smile. She's an audience member. You know how I usually watch shows like this? It doesn't mean I'm hating it. It means that I'm off tonight and I'm going to sit and enjoy the show without doing all of this work to show everyone how good I feel about it because I'm an audience member. So I totally understand that maybe she was just experiencing the show. And what I will also say is that she stayed after the show for a really long time. She made certain that she talked to all of us. She made certain that she expressed how much she enjoyed the show, how much she missed Heather's, how much she loved our choices, our portrayals, and the addition of the music and the dancing to the story. So this is definitely more a story about us being self-conscious than it is about her actually not liking the show. But believe you me when I tell you, we all were certain that Winona hated Heather's. I don't think she did, which is great. And then later in New York, Christian Slater saw it too. So the original JD and the original Veronica both saw Heather's the musical. But of course, Winona saw the LA iteration, which was much smaller, and Christian saw the full-blown thing off Broadway at New World Stages the following year. My final story goes like this. It doesn't really have much to do with Heather's. It just happened while I was in Heather's. So this was when we were in Heather's in New York. Theater is a very interesting thing in that you are very exposed and very accessible to the people who come to see the show. Especially for an off-Broadway show, it's not like we have security. It's not like we have a car service to take us home. So the fact of the matter is, if there was, I don't know, let's say a super fan who came to the show, who just stood by the only exit that I can use to get out the building, they can talk to me, they can follow me home, they can follow my friends, they can do whatever they want to. There really was no security there. And while none of us were like the most famous thing in the world, and I certainly wasn't and still am not by any metric, this was sort of at the very beginning of Liv and Maddie coming out, and Heather's was getting pretty popular, and so some people were starting to get pretty... Obsessive is maybe a weird word, but that's kind of how it felt. I met this woman who was, I don't know, maybe in her 40s or 50s. She had a son, and she brought her son to see Heather's like 2 or 3 times. He was maybe 8 and seemed very disinterested in Heather's. She claimed that he was a massive Liv and Maddie fan and that she really wanted him to meet me. But the more that she kept showing up and the more disinterested that this son became, the more it became apparent that this woman was using her son sort of as a prop to make it seem like it was his interest that brought her there, but it was really hers. I was dating my co-star from Liv and Maddie at the time, so not only was there some interest in meeting me, but to meet my girlfriend at the time, that would be a 1-2 punch. I had posted something banal on my Instagram, and my girlfriend commented, "See you in 3 weeks," because we were long distance at the time and we were going to see each other in 3 weeks. 3 weeks from that point happened to be Easter weekend. This woman, I guess, did the math that my girlfriend would probably be coming to the show, that show would probably be the Easter show because that would be 3 weeks from the time that she commented that, and therefore she thought that if she came to that show, she could meet me and her. So we did our show on Easter Sunday, and lo and behold, there this woman was to meet me and my girlfriend. She spent a lot of time talking to us. She kept touching us. She followed us out and kept talking to us for multiple blocks. Luckily, my family was there, and my dad was kind of able to pretend he was my security guard and shake this woman off of us. We all went to get a bite to eat. We talked about how weird that was, and off we went. I thought it was over, but it wasn't. This woman came a few more times, and it eventually became a bit of a concern for the production as well for me, because this person seemed a little bit crazy. So we sort of flagged it with production, and we were able to facilitate ways for me to get out of the building if we knew that she would be there, so that I could just say, "Hi, nice to see you again," and be on my way. And she unfortunately became sort of upset that she had lost access. So one day after the show, I was alerted that she was there. I left the theater very quickly and immediately went home. I was living with the guy who played Kurt and the guy who played Ram, John and Evan at the time, so we shared an apartment up in Harlem. So I went home early. They said they were going to go out for a couple drinks. They would see me when they got back home. When they get back home, they say, "Boy, do we have a story for you." And they said that when they went out to drinks, this woman followed them to drinks, sat down next to them, stared at them for quite a while, and then eventually approached them and told them that she was my aunt and she had a family emergency, she needed my number and needed to get in contact with me, and asked them to give her my phone number multiple times. When they refused, she asked them if they knew where I lived, and they were smart enough to say no, even though they literally lived with me. And apparently, she even followed them for a couple of blocks after they left. And if they weren't able to shake her, which luckily they were, she could have literally followed them to my apartment. As far as I know, that is the last time that she came. But during Heather's, I fully had a stalker, and that was kind of crazy. So, which is the lie? The White Trench Coat, Winona Ryder and Billy Crystal breaking fire codes to see Heathers the Musical, or my Heathers the Musical New York City stalker? Let me know in the comments below which 2 truths you think are truthing and which lie you think is lying. And when we do a part 2, I will do 2 truths and a lie about another project that I've worked on. But before I go into my stories, I will make sure to fill you in about which of these was true and which of these was the lie. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give me feedback in the comments below, and of course leave your guesses as to which one you think is the lie. I have a lot of fun stories from my career, so many more stories from Heathers, but also stories from Disney's Frozen on Broadway, the tour, Wicked the Musical, the Rocky Horror Picture Show, of course Liv and Maddie, and just working on Disney Channel in general. So I'm really excited to share more of those stories with you in the videos to come. As always, be sure to like and subscribe. I know that I can speak for Samantha when I say we thank you for being here and for watching as we continue with Sam and Ryan Season 4. Sending you a lot of love, and we will see you on the next one. Bye, Daddy!